Good morning and welcome to our first edition of Discover Mercer County podcast. And couldn't think of a better guest to have with us today than Dr. Susan Traverso, the president of Thiel College. And we're here at this beautiful new podcasting center in the Pettis Communication Center on campus here at Thiel. So Susan, welcome.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm so used to the camera and the teleprompter and all that, so this is going to be a little bit different. But let's just start off by talking about your story and how you came to be the president at Thiel, because I think it's fascinating.
Well, it's a wonderful story because it was a Thiel grad, an alumna, who I knew professionally, graduated from Thiel, loved the college, was an active graduate. I stayed in touch with the college, and in 2016, when there was an opening for a new president, she called me and she said, "You've got to look at Thiel. It's the perfect place for you." And I knew a lot about her and her values and all that she'd learned at Thiel, so I said, I'll look at that. And I was so pleased when I came up and had the interview and had the opportunity, the board gave me the opportunity to take this wonderful leadership position.
Now, had you declared yourself a candidate for a college presidency somewhere when you were approached?
Yeah. Well, I had been in higher ed for most of my career since being a Peace Corps volunteer and earning my PhD, first as a faculty member and then in administration out in Southern California, and then in Elizabethtown. And so I think I was active in higher ed, and I think people were assuming I might look at a presidency. So Thiel gave me the opportunity. I jumped at it.
Oh, that's great. So you really hadn't, I guess, sports parlance, you hadn't kind of had an agent out there saying, hey, if there's an opening, I'd like to be put forth as a potential candidate at that point.
No, but colleges, including Thiel, have people searching and keeping an eye out for people that might be a good fit. And so those folks had been in touch with me about possibilities. But I was looking for a place much like Thiel. If I was going to be a president, I wanted to be president at a place that really had a commitment to the region it served in and really was committed to bringing in students from a wide range of backgrounds. Those were two values that were very important to me, so Thiel fit the bill.
And where does that come from? A lot of people know you as the president of the college, and some have gotten to know you a little bit personally, but tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, how you came to be so academically minded and now a leader in higher ed.
Well, I had the great privilege, both my parents went to college, but my family's story is very much a story of social and economic mobility through college education. My father, Alexander Traverso, was the son of an Italian plumber in Boston who had an 8th grade education. And through really good public schools in Boston and then service in World War II, my father and my uncle in one generation enjoyed a great high school education, and then my father went to Harvard, my uncle went to Brown. And that's the American story. That's the story of having great institutions of education available to you, having support from the government, as both my father and my uncle had, to take advantage of really wonderful educational opportunities.
And where were you growing up at the time? Where did all this happen?
It all happened outside of Boston. My parents grew up in the city of Boston. We were suburban kids, post-World War II suburban kids. So there's this story of how valuable education is to changing your life. But that's not just for you. It was understood in my family that if you had the privilege to go to college, you had the actually responsibility to be a productive citizen in a career that brought you meaning and did good for your society. And also the expectation, and my parents were models of this, very much involved in your community. So my parents were involved in the Dollars for Scholars organization.
Oh, interesting.
And as a little kid, they dragged us along, going door to door, knocking on the door, collecting literally single dollars, which we put in these little envelopes.
Oh, I think
Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah,
and the Dollars for Scholars funded local high school graduates from Weymouth, where I grew up, to help underwrite their college. Little did I know that years later I become a college president, and I'm always looking for dollars for scholars.
That's great training. I love that.
But it started in my parents, and then my mother was an interest. Whereas after we were in school, she went back to work, and then she opened up her own business. She was a tax consultant, and she hired all the women in the neighborhood and taught them how to do taxes. And they ran a little tax return shop down at the end of the street. So my parents were great positive influences on me to say, take every advantage you can to get a quality education and then give back. And then right after graduating from Simmons College, which is a small...
I was going to ask you where you went.
Yeah, Simmons College is a small women's college, has a lot of graduate programs now as well that are co-ed. But it's right next to Fenway Park in Boston. It's a fantastic location. But when I graduated from there, I went right into the Peace Corps and said, I want to give back and I want to see the world. And so off I went to be a school teacher in North Africa and Morocco, learned to speak Arabic, learned to live in a Muslim society, and most importantly, learned how to teach. And when I came back from Peace Corps, I worked a little bit longer as a recruiter to talk other people into being in Peace Corps. And my admissions department is always saying, you're really good at this, talking to families. How do you do this? I said I started my career recruiting college grads to be Peace Corps
volunteers. This is easy.
It's easy. I love it. You know?
Hey, we're going to take you, we're going to make you volunteer, and then we're going to send you halfway around the world and teach you how to live on nothing.
Nothing, yeah. So that started my career in education, and I came back. I knew I wanted to be in education. And so I had been a history major, so I went off to graduate school and earned a PhD.
And where was that? Where did
my graduate education was at UW, University of Wisconsin-Madison.
And what possessed you to go? I mean, you're a New Englander. Yeah. You've been in North Africa. What possessed you to go out
I think
west?
most folks that grew up in Boston think that the western suburbs of Boston is as far as they'll go.
Right.
So it was really a big step to go out to the Midwest. But Wisconsin is renowned in American history. It's been that way for many years.
Kind of like Iowa, University of Iowa for literature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I said, well, we'll go out there, but I never expected to then stay in the Midwest. You know, the New Englander, you'd go, then you'd come back close to my family. But I ended up meeting a Midwesterner.
I was going to ask you where Kent came in, where he entered the picture.
My husband, Kent Taylor, who works for the Bureau of Forestry here in Pennsylvania. We met just as I was finishing up my graduate education. So he sort of converted me to the Midwest. Our kids were born outside of Chicago. My faculty career was at a small college, North Central College in Naperville.
Yeah. I have an aunt in Naperville.
Yeah.
I know exactly where the North Central campus is. It's nice out there.
But then we went on our crazy Southern California adventure. I became a dean, and Kent moved into really becoming an expert in geographic information systems.
Oh, the GIS
software.
stuff. Okay.
So that all happened out in California, and but too far from home, and so we ended up settling in Pennsylvania, which was perfect, halfway between New England, my home, and Chicago, his home. And we've loved it in the Commonwealth. It's been a great place to raise our kids.
I actually had to be in Harrisburg yesterday, and where we drove right out there by Elizabethtown, in the kind of the shadow of TMI out there, and so you were just recruited back there. That you were just looking for opportunities.
Yeah, I wanted to come back closer to my folks who were they're gone now, but they were elderly, and it made sense. But once again, my path, while it has moved me twice across the country, there is a thread there, and that is my faculty career was at North Central, small private college, undergraduate and graduate degrees, but very much focused on that personalized education. From there, the University of Redlands, very similar, committed to serving the region and very personalized education, and some graduate programs, including communication disorders, which was very relevant for me because here at Thiel, our first graduate program was in speech-language pathology, and I had that experience. Elizabethtown, founded by the Church of the Brethren, now an independent college, once again, graduate, undergraduate primarily, and some graduate programs. And while I was provost there, we added 6 additional graduate programs. So it sounds, I can look back at it now, it looks very planned, but you're taking it one step at a time. But if you're following your heart and you know what your values are, and my values where I want to be at a college of higher learning that was committed to the region it was in and committed to this really high quality personal education where students can figure out who they are and get launched into a meaningful career path and life path.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about how Thiel's doing today, but one of the things that I've seen, having grown up in Greenville and came back, and I'm here to stay, but it's the economic engine that the college has become. And I think you've really absorbed that in your leadership here, and you've become, and now I know where it comes from, the way that you were brought up. You had this social responsibility to chase an education and then turn around and use it in the world, not just as a teacher, but to lift communities. So you're actually doing that in your role at Penn-Northwest and other things that you're involved in around town and the region. But tell me how you envision, this small college, which isn't really that small. When you look at it in terms of a $30 million revenue annually, I mean, it's a substantial business that you're running.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll transition into just how the college is doing and where you see it going over the next 4 years of you being here.
Thiel is definitely an economic engine in Mercer County. We have 200 full-time employees, another 50 part-time employees. Our annual payroll is over $17 million. Most of our employers live in Mercer County, so they make a living at Thiel, whether they're a faculty member or they work in facilities or they're working in our career center. They are engines going out into the community, making investments in Mercer County, buying their groceries in Mercer County, sending their kids to Mercer County schools. And so we are this engine. We are one of the 3 largest employers in northern Mercer County, and we're one of the top 20 employers in Mercer County. And then recently, we have been making substantial improvements on campus and $15 million of investments into Mercer County, largely with local contractors, buying local gift goods. And then beyond the engine that we have our alumni base. Over 3,000 Thiel alums live in Mercer County. And it's estimated that their economic impact is in the several millions themselves. Some of them were from Mercer County, but we see often, and Thiel has a long history of having students come to Mercer County to enroll in Thiel, and then they fall in love with the place and they settle here. And we want to see more of that to help Mercer County retain talent.
And I think really that's something that you've really embraced in your role in economic development, is this overarching theme that drives our economic development strategy in the county, which is repopulation. Finally putting a foot down and saying enough is enough brain drain, enough of people leaving here without really understanding the width and depth of our economic opportunities, the world-class education you can get, the world-class training you can get, and still have a broad base of employment opportunities for people, even though we're in a small community. But one of the things that amazed me about Thiel is just how still few people from the area and the region know that much about us.
And I think Thiel, needs to get out more. We're committed to this region, but we need to tell our story more. And in our new strategic plan, one of the 4 goals is all about regional outreach. Now, we have over 50 of our students in internships, field studies, student teaching. So our students are out in the community. Certainly our campus is open to all. They can come for the sports events, or they can come for Conspirito. The GSO is we're the home of the Greenville Symphony Orchestra. But I think constantly getting out and telling our story, I think is important for people to understand that we are very much part of the success Mercer County is having and will have. But you and I have talked about this. The strategy for really foregrounding Mercer County has to be a collaborative strategy, because people choose to live in Mercer County because it's a good place to work. So all of us that can employ folks, important. a good place to live. So we have to have the right housing stock. We have to have more rental property in Greenville, for example. We have to have make sure that we do urban planning that makes it an attractive place to live, an easy place to live. And then we talk about, particularly young people, they want to know, is this a great place to play?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hang out and have a good time here?
So we talk about kayaking down the Shenango River and bike paths. Those are important. But also, where are the brew pubs? Where are the places where young people want to hang out? Where are the social organizations that make it a great place to live? So it can't be just an economic strategy or an educational strategy or a social strategy. It has to be a collaborative strategy, which I think over the past 7 years, I'm so happy to see through collaboration, and Penn-Northwest, I think, is in the center of it, is weaving together those strategies that we all want Mercer County to thrive, and we have a small niche ourselves, but together it's a powerhouse.
And I think, as someone who's trying to be an economic development professional, and now my, 6th different career that I've had since my great liberal arts education I got at Thiel. But, what I have learned, and in the room off camera is our marketing director at Penn-Northwest, and she and I spend a lot of time behind the mic, I would say without a microphone and without a camera, talking to business owners about, what type of community do you want to see in order to be able to attract and retain workers? And we quickly realized, especially coming out of the pandemic, when we saw this really geometric, just rocket ship of people working from home and really choosing a lifestyle where they could also work, rather than having where they work determine what their lifestyle is. A completely juxtaposition of those two. And economic development strategies then became, where do you live? Where do you learn?
Right.
Where do you play? And then I'll find a place to work. So the whole model, even from the federal government to the state, and it's interesting how now all these dollars are being driven down to the local level, which is some of us on one side of the political spectrum always thought that these best decisions could be made locally. Now they are, because communities are figuring out that they've got to get the live and the learn and the play side down, or they're never going to be a desirable place for people to work. So, as you've looked at transitioning Thiel into, oh yeah, we're doing economic development over here, and yeah, we're going to do education over here. Now they're like this.
Right.
So you've been on the cutting edge of leading the board of trustees, your faculty, your staff, and actually recruiting a different type of student.
Right.
Talk about how you've seen that transition over the last 7 years.
Well, it's a fair criticism of higher education, particularly residential campuses. There's some truth to be said that it is a place to go, quote, away to college. So you go away and you live in this beautiful campus and you make friends, you're taking courses, you're having great conversations with your faculty, and you're growing stronger in preparation, and sometimes we used to say to go into the real world. But education has completely changed now. Parents and students are looking for more immediate return on investment. They want to know, okay, it's great, you're going to go to college, what happens next? And I think some college leaders sort of resent that. They want this sort of idyllic, moment to think and take in all kinds of great courses. But I'm a sort of practical person, and I actually believe you can do both at the same time. So yes,
let me just stop you real quick, because practicality and practical people usually don't find themselves running colleges.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's just it's a credit to you, but I think it's also a change, a sea change in higher ed leadership, where we used to call it the town gown relationship, but getting students. We're joined in the studio today with one of our college interns who comes to Thiel, and she's a senior, but from the city of Pittsburgh. Young African-American woman who's on the verge of graduating and considering a number of opportunities and interning in our office. But, connecting your students to careers and opportunities now is a higher priority, is what I hear you saying.
Where I trace it back, my values there is historically Simmons College had, back when its founding day, had this leader, Sarah Arnold. She was the dean of women. And she had this phrase. Again, this is 1903. I wasn't at. I have gray hair, but I wasn't at Simmons in 1903. But she's a quote for Sarah Arnold is, "It's not enough to be good. You must be good at something." And that was really very much the Simmons ethos, different than the other women's colleges founded at that time and even still today. We were supposed to take all the value of a college education, but then we were expected to do something with it. And they really pressed that upon us. So from the time I started in higher ed, I don't see those as attention. Some people make them attention, but our students simultaneously enjoy this beautiful campus, enjoy long, late night conversations with friends, and go down to the cafe and someone else cooks for them and they just go through the line and get the food. They get to play sports. They get to be in our theater program, come in and do podcasts. They get all this wonderful sort of almost magic experience. But they are always in all their classes talking about, how do I get an internship? How do I connect what I'm doing with what I'm going to do this summer? How about go down and do Thiel's summer program or semester program in Washington, D.C. and work with politicians and NGOs down there? So they are very much able to do both, and they want both. And we provide at Thiel both of those experiences. And so I think we talk at Thiel about preparing students for careers and lives of meaning and purpose. So we have no problem saying we are both this wonderful liberal arts college, and that doesn't have any political meaning. What it means is it's a college, like many colleges, that free you to explore different ideas, different topics, different belief systems. You can take science courses, you can take literature courses, you can take business courses, education courses. You're free to explore higher ed. But Thiel has, I think always had, but particularly under my leadership, is, okay, good. Now, how are you going to get ready? At Thiel, another phrase that I use is, at Thiel we prepare students for their first job and their last job. So, or their first career, in your case, right?
Yeah.
And their last
Yeah.
career. And
Yeah.
that day one readiness, the feedback from our employees is, superintendents of schools and principals of schools say, oh my God, your elementary ed teachers, your secondary ed teachers, they come in, their preparation at Thiel, they're able to teach that class day one effectively. And I'm sure they'll grow and change with their Thiel education, as you did, Rod. And by the end of their career, who knows? They could be a principal. They could have moved into higher ed. They might now be supervising all of the special ed teachers in the region. They have emerged as the leaders in their field. But day one, they're ready. And we also hear from employees that they hire some college grads and they're not ready because maybe they've just been hanging out on campus. At Thiel, fine, have a great time.
But you're going to be out in the community doing something.
Come. So it's that combination of the two. Now, graduate programs, brand new space for Thiel. So 7 years ago when I came, I looked at this wonderful undergraduate institution, and I looked at the demands in the labor force in our region and in our state. And it's clear that there was a lot of demand for professionals that have advanced degrees. And so we went to work and said, can we serve that need as well? And we've moved into graduate degrees. So we have the speech language masters. We have an MBA, very dynamic, unusual, distinctive MBA. We have the jewel is the physician assistant program. Such a demand in this new medical world for physician assistants. And then finally, we have a clinical mental health counseling degree. All serving the workforce needs of this region.
Yeah, and I look at it as, the Economic Development Organization, you went out, through the pandemic and developed other streams of income to supplement the undergraduate education, which we know there's a cliff coming with the number of high school graduates graduating from college. Just in our region, we just have fewer people. But just like any good business model, and part of the reason that we're doing this podcast with Dr. Susan Traverso, the president of the college here at Thiel, is to talk about, the tie between education, your students, and the economics of having a great place like Thiel in the northern part of the county. And Mercer County is very fortunate because we have Grove City in our southeastern corner. We have Penn State, Shenango in the Shenango Valley, and you look at a county of 110,000 people, we've got 3 4-year colleges, we've got Butler County Community College, we've got some great technology schools here. I mean, what an opportunity to get a world-class education here in Mercer County. And so before we shut this down, we try and keep these podcasts around a half an hour, and I know how valuable your time is as well. Just tell our listeners how the college is doing financially. I think it's always a question out there. People in the community have seen kind of Thiel go through some tough times, but I always tell folks, hey, they've been there 150 years. Our job is to make sure they get another 150 out of it. But just what is the state of the college from a financial standpoint these days?
Well, the good news about Thiel is, unlike many colleges and universities, we grew during the pandemic. In other words, we added more students, both undergraduates and graduates. And we were able to do that because we brought our students back, we kept them safe, and they were thrilled to be being taught face-to-face. And there weren't many colleges, only about a third of colleges were able to do that. And we did, and we kept our students safe. So our numbers of undergraduates have steadily increased. And then, of course, the graduate programs have added over 100 students to Thiel. Most of Thiel's revenue comes from tuition.
So let me stop you. So when you monetize those extra 100 students, we're talking about a revenue stream of almost $500,000 then, at least.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, no, more than that.
Oh, more. Wait,
more
my math is off. It could be $5 million.
Right.
Yes,
Right,
I'm sorry. I forgot a zero.
Yeah.
I started on the path of being a math major, and it just didn't work.
Now, of course, to lift those programs, we've hired more faculty, we have expenses, we've created a beautiful physician assistant floor in our science center. But in fact, the graduate programs do help diversify and strengthen our revenue. The undergraduates are really very important to us, and we have a range of students from students from very modest backgrounds where parents didn't get to go to college, or there's one parent, all the way up to people whose grandparents went to college, come from professional backgrounds. And so we provide $17 million of scholarship aid to students to make undergraduate education possible.
So talk about that for just a quick second. How do you get over the sticker shock of higher education? It doesn't matter where you're going. Everyone is amazed by how much it costs. But at Thiel, it's kind of like buying a car with a lot of discounts.
This is the model of quality education across the country. It's different from in the private sector. They are able to offer lower tuitions because the taxpayers, including you and me, are subsidizing that through taxes. As a private institution...
But even at private, there are some tools out there that are publicly funded.
Right. Here, we rely on our alums and our friends and grants and foundations like the Dietrich Foundation to provide the resources that we need, plus making our own adjustments within our own institutional aid to make it possible for students to come to Thiel through these very generous scholarships. They are still making an investment. Most of our students do take out student loans. We're very careful in talking with them that they take out only those loans that they can reasonably be able to pay back with the career path that they're going down. I had student loans.
I did too.
I
did too. I had free tuition here because my mom taught here, but it was still the, room, board, books, living expenses, things like that. I had them as well.
Yeah, and I had a scholarship from the Veterans Administration because of my father's service, but I had to take out student loans. And they were the best loans I've ever taken because if I hadn't gone to Simmons, I don't think I would have had the confidence to go on to Peace Corps and then the graduate school because Simmons built that in. Perhaps I could have gone to a less expensive public community college or out to UMass Amherst. I don't think I would have been the person I am today without going to Simmons. So it was the best investment I could have made. But we are careful with our students. We talk to them about their responsibilities with that. Students also have to make good choices when they're at college. Maybe they, they don't, they understand that it's 4 short years. and they won't be able to do everything they're going to be able to do as they move into a professional world. So they're careful with their finances, and we talk to them about that. Make good choices while you're still in college. And most importantly, whether it's at Thiel or any other college, the most important thing is if you start college, you must graduate.
Yeah, you got to figure it out.
You've got to figure it out.
And you have put together a program here at Thiel and fixed a systemic problem that we had for decades, which is the retention issue. And if Melinda's over there giving me the, come on, shut it down. We could do this for hours. I love this. The only thing we're missing is a beer for me and a glass of wine for you, and we really get into it. But we're here with Dr. Traverso at Thiel College, the president, and got her talking a little bit about her growing up and her background and what her vision has been for Thiel. And I appreciate you opening up a little bit, because a lot of people in your position, my position, sometimes they really don't know much about the person. Right. But I think when they get to know the person, then a lot of the decisions that get made, they start to make some sense. Before we do shut it down, though, just talk about this big, audacious program that you're starting to launch to rebuild the actual academic center and the entrance to it. Had a wonderful gift from a Greenville resident, Dan, and his wife, Dottie Spence. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Well, there's
it's
a lot
very
of exciting things happening, but starting with the Roadhouse Science Building, we were able to renovate it top to tail, brand new science labs. We were able to do that thanks to a grant from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's RCAP program. And lots of donations. Now we're moving into the rest of the program, and we're really wanting to make investments, as we did in the PA, in our mental health counseling program, in our nursing program, in our business program, which is renowned, business and accounting, and all of our academic programs in that building. We are blessed to have a lead gift, and the building is now named the Daniel and Dorothy Spence Academic Center. Dottie sadly passed away, but she was a friend of the college, and her husband Dan is just a remarkable person. His grandfather was a professor and a dean at Thiel, and so he's a family connection. But we have lots of other people who are stepping up, alums and friends of the college, saying the quality of education depends very much first and foremost on the faculty. They are the core. But giving them those modern resources like this wonderful podcast, a gift from Jim Pettis, a graduate of Thiel, now an elderly man in Washington, D.C., having had a great career in media, terrific friend of the college. We are very, very actively raising money to complete those investments in those academic programs in the what we now call the Spence Center. So, and grateful for all the gifts from our alums each and every day, each and every year. Couldn't do it without them.
But at the end of the day, it's going to be a $10 to $12 million investment in the college.
It is,
Yeah, we're thrilled to hear that. I wish we had more time. This is so much fun. We want to thank our listeners and those that might be watching for joining us for our first ever episode of Discover Mercer County Business Podcast. I'm Rod Wild. I'm the Executive Director of Penn-Northwest, and Dr. Susan Traverso, who has become one of my dearest friends in life over the last several years, and just can't say enough about the great debates we have about the direction and future of the college and the region. But at the end of the day, we really appreciate your transparency, and we thank you for spending what will soon be a decade of your life with us here and helping us rebuild Mercer County. We really thank you for everything you're doing.
Thanks so much, Rod.
And we appreciate you, our watchers and listeners, and we'll see you next time on Discover Mercer County Podcast.
Thanks much.